things in Russia proceed as they are now, President Roosevelt reflected to his son Elliot, then perhaps next spring there'll be no need for the Second Front at all. In Churchill's words, 1943 marked the turning of the tide. In Moscow, the victory salvos roared for Russian battles. There were American and British landings in the Mediterranean, North Africa, Sicily, Italy. But they were not the Second Front the Soviets wanted. The plans for the invasion of France were being developed in London, while the Soviets waited. Churchill had been concentrating on North Africa, on the Nazi menace to Britain's Mideast oil, and beyond that, the road to India. Roosevelt was preoccupied with the Pacific and the Japanese in Southeast Asia. The three leaders met for the first time in November of 1943 at the Soviet embassy in Tehran. Though each of the three had to serve the interests of his own nation, all sought means to strengthen the common cause against Hitler. Comparisons were made in private, and they were painful. For every German division fighting the Americans and British, 10 were employed against the Soviets. It was also arguable that the Western Allies' efforts had drawn off Nazi divisions that might have affected the outcome in Russia. There was one ceremony that symbolized their mood of mutual respect and friendship. The Sword of Stalingrad, gift of King George VI to the people of this hero city. In similar vein, the United States and Britain broadcast the monologue from the classic Soviet movie, Alexander Nevsky.
We in Russia are children of peace. I, Alexander Nevsky, speak on behalf of Russia, and I say this to the rest of the world. If you will come to us in peace, you are welcome. But if you come with the sword or the threat of the sword, then remember the old saying. We proved it true once again yesterday, proved it true on the frozen lake against the might of the Germans. Those who take the sword, by the sword shall they perish.
After Stalingrad came retribution. At Madison Square Garden, New York, an occasion celebrating unity. The guest of honor, Andrei Gromyko. Soviet ambassador to the United States, comes for the first performance in the West of Shostakovich's Seventh Symphony, composed in besieged Leningrad. Maestro Leopold Stokowski.
The unknown war will continue in a moment. To Allies.
"1944 was the beginning of the end for the Third Reich. Its debts were coming due. For the Soviet people, 1944 was the year of liberation, the year of beginning to rebuild. For the Red Army, 1944 was the year of predominance. Everywhere, from the Baltic to the Black Sea, the Red Army battered forward, across the Soviet frontier, surging for Berlin. In the recovered republics, life returned. The nightmare had passed, but not the memory of those who ended it and those who suffered it. Inside the Ukraine, throughout 1944, there was a little piece of the United States. The airfield at Poltava, one of 3. Heavy bombers of the U.S. Air Force flew into Poltava after bombing cities deep inside of Germany and our allies. B-17, the flying fortresses. Averell Harriman, United States Ambassador in Moscow, visited Poltava to witness a pleasant ceremony. American combat decorations for their Soviet allies. The Americans brought